Dzień dobry, assalamu alaikum, ciao, konnichiwa, bonjour, Allah, hola, even, namaste. Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Ken at 10, as usual, bringing you the day's news on the property market. How are you? I hope you're well. We had a number of viewings over the weekend, quite a large number of viewings, about 40 viewings in total, and a number of sales were agreed over the weekend as well. And the one thing that's coming across more and more, I'm getting lots of calls from people saying what's happening, what's going on. And that's what we find when the market's changing, people are worried. The desire for information is much greater. And that's one thing where we're finding that we're winning, because we're providing the information to you as it occurs firsthand here in the front line, as it were, of a state agency in Southwest London, anyway, in Southwest 16. We're in Norbury, which is between Streatham to the north, near Brixton, and Croydon to the south. And we basically get a bit of mixed market, really. We've got everything from millionaire buy-to-let investors to more typical accidental buy-to-let investors, which is the majority of our market, where people have decided to rent rather than sell, sometimes for reasons that were just literally because they decided that was the best thing for them, because they needed to move to another property, needed to close the deal out quickly, sometimes because they inherited property and thought it was better to hold on to the property for their family. And often it is. And we've got many people now that rely on that rental income to help educate their children, to help pay their rent somewhere else, maybe in another country even. And also lots of pensioners who invested in buy-to-let some 10 or 20 years ago and now rely on those monies coming in to subsidise their pensions, because they're never enough. As many of you will echo that out there, I know. Kwasi Kwarteng, as we know, we've got another mini budget speech coming up on Halloween. That's the next financial statement date. Oh, why he's done it on Halloween? That's spooky, isn't it? We'll see what happens there. There is talk as well, and this is quite a big one, of overturning of the abolishment of Section 21. Now, Section 21 is the no-fault route of eviction for landlords. This is where landlords can serve a notice at any time on a tenant for no reason and say, I want my property back outside of the term of the initial contract, normally 6 months or 12 months. So in other words, 4 months into a contract, or 12 months into a contract, or 10 months into a contract, I should say, there can then be 2 months notice telling the tenant that they have to leave at the end of the term, after that 2 months expires. There is talk in the Renters Reform Act of this being repealed now. The Renters Reform Act is new legislation which is going through the House of Parliament at the moment, and it's widely heard that Liz Truss doesn't like it, doesn't want it, and wants to repeal it and wants to get rid of it. So we'll see what happens there, but it'd be really interesting, because one of the things that scares landlords is the idea that they might not be able to get their property back. Interestingly, when you read the Renters Reform Act, it's actually quite a balanced document. You know, if you look at Shelter and what they're saying, it's almost as if landlords are going to be hammered completely with this legislation. And that's not actually true. It's actually quite balanced, because they're replacing it with other checks and balances, which still allow landlords to get their properties back. But it is an interesting one that Liz Truss, again, is really pinning her mast to the property market. And we saw this in the budget, didn't we? Although that's bitten back, hasn't it? So we'll see how it goes. It's interesting that he's chosen this 31st of October deadline, though, because the markets will shut that down. And I think the idea is that will give him some time to then reflect, do the numbers, do the maths on it, and this time come with the Office for Budget Responsibilities numbers, which they didn't do last time. Basically, they came up with this whole plan, and it didn't provide confidence because they hadn't looked at the numbers. This time around, they're going to look at the numbers, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully it will stabilize the markets, because the 2-year fixed rates have now gone up as high as 6%, 6.3% on average now, I understand. And that's a big jump from where we were when we were talking about interest rates of barely 1% at one point. And you think now here we are up with fixed rates at 6%. For many people, and this is not financial advice, it may be worth looking at where your rates are right now. What we know is that the next time that the Bank of England looks at base rates is going to be at the next Monetary Policy Committee meeting. And the next one happens in November, not October. So it could be a really good time, not financial advice, to think about fixing your loan if you haven't already, especially if you're outside of any fixed rate and you're on a variable rate. But even if you're in one, it might be worth speaking to an independent financial advisor. Always seek independent financial advice, because sometimes you can work out that staying with your fixed rate may not be the best option. It may be worth paying the penalty to come away from that rate to come to a new rate that is higher, but will defend you against future rate rises. It does depend on a lot of variables, such as whether you'll be accepted by a new lender, whether the amount of loan you have stacks in terms of the costs of you coming out and going to a new service. And you really have to look at really a bit of a crystal ball gaze as to where interest rates will go next. My guess is we're looking at a hike now of another 1% on interest rates coming, and that will come in November. So it's going to be tough times for the next few months, no doubt. People are already choosing whether to heat or eat, and then on top of that, with the interest rates going up so high, it's a very scary time for a lot of families. And it will pass. I said this yesterday, but it's true. And I always think the strongest and best characters come out when you're put under pressure, a bit like grapes, you squeeze it hard enough and then the nice bit comes out. And I think that's true of people as well. It can also bring the nasty side out as well. But I do think you see true characters in times of struggle, and we'll see who the true characters are, and we'll see which agents win out in this kind of market. We've been through this many times before. Another recession, here we are. For us, we've been here for 30 years. So we've been there, done that, know what to do, know how to market your home to the best possible advantage, even in a really tricky market. And that's the key thing. Many of the agents that you'll see now, inexperienced with recession-led times. They may not have even seen a time of recession before, let alone know how to market property within it. And it's critical that you get an agent that understands these things and can give you the best possible advice. And that's why we're finding such a peak in people asking us for information on what's going on with the market, because information is key, isn't it? With information, we have power to make the right decisions at the right times. And we hope we can provide you with that. And that might be that it's not the right time for you to move right now. It might be it's a great time for you to move right now. Always worth having a chat with us, though, because sometimes you can find that the best time to move is when everyone else isn't, and vice versa. It really does depend on your personal circumstances. But if you'd like advice on whether to buy, sell, let, rent, we're here for you. We've got your back on that. And that's the one thing I always say, and I like people to think, is that when it comes to property, James Alexander got your back. That's what we're here for. So also, great. The reason for the auction hammer behind my head, by the way, is a lovely podcast this week with our friend Guy Charrison from Network Auctions. He was fantastic and told some very interesting stories, particularly one about a guy arriving in a helicopter at an auction and pipping his wife at the post, so to speak. So have a look up that. It tickers along the bottom of the screen there. Do have a look, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed chatting to Guy. Have a fantastic day. Thanks very much for watching. Here in Southwest London, the weather's quite bright, actually. A little bit chilly. Nice autumnal day. Hope you have a great day. Look after yourselves, and if you can, your family and friends. See you tomorrow. Ciao.